Welcome back to Organist Launchpad, a series of videos from the Royal Canadian College of Organists. I'm Jonathan Oldengarm, Minister of Music at Metropolitan United Church in Toronto, Ontario. In this video, I'll be talking about C clefs, and in particular, how C clefs can be your best friends. Unless you're a viola player, a trombonist, or a cellist in your other life, chances are that you do not read C clefs in your everyday. However, C clefs can be an amazingly powerful tool, and mastering them will not only make you a better person, it will also help your transposition skills, and it can potentially save you the misery of reading many, many ledger lines. One of the best sources for these types of scores that use the standard 3 C clefs, the soprano, the alto, and the tenor, can be found in the old Bach Gesellschaft volumes of chorales from the collection of Philipp Emmanuel Bach, Bach's second son. You can find the link to that collection in the video description below. Let's look at the very first chorale as an example. Where do you start if you have no experience in reading C clefs? First of all, the center of the bow in the clef indicates where middle C can be found on the staff. Let's start with the alto line and the alto clef. We'll observe that middle C is conveniently located on the center line of the staff. Therefore, the top line of the staff is G and the bottom line of the staff is tenor F. Armed with that knowledge, we now have 3 fixed points of reference when we're reading the alto clef. Continue with the alto clef and read through another dozen or so of the other chorales, or even the whole set. You'll want to start reading that clef and all of the other C clefs on their own terms, not as transpositions of the treble or bass clefs that are probably more familiar to you. Now that we've learned to speak fluent alto clef, let's read the alto clef line together with the bass line. Remember the points from part 1 of this series. Before you set your fingers down and start playing, check the key signature, the time signature, the clefs, the dynamics, the manual pedal indications, etc. Consciously practice reading ahead. Even if you play and read slowly, start with reading 1 beat ahead of where your hands are at all times. Then make it 2 beats, then 3, then 4 or more. Then, go through the tenor and soprano clefs in the same way. Read single lines until you can read the clef fluently on its own terms. In these chorale harmonizations, you will observe that there are almost never ledger lines. The clef is placed so that the normal range of the voice sits comfortably within the stave. You may find that your reading initially is relative, as in, I'm playing 1 tone higher than the last note I just played, which was a C, ergo the next note must be a D. There's nothing wrong with this at all. It's a normal part of mastering the language of a new clef. A bit like sounding words out phonetically when you were learning to read written words. Next, you can move on to the pro level and combine alto, tenor, and bass clefs in your reading. Play on 2 manuals and pedal if you like, assigning a voice to each hand and to your feet, and so that you're sure you're reading 3 lines fair and square. Next, you can graduate to the champion level, all 4 of the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass clefs at the same time. Play them all on 1 manual with 2 hands if you like, or try the soprano on a solo manual, the alto and tenor with the left hand, and the bass with the pedal. If you really want to stretch yourself, play the lower 3 voices in the manuals with 2 hands, and solo the soprano line in the pedal on a 2-foot stop. You could practice hands and feet separately. For example, try just playing the alto and tenor voices with the left hand, and just try left hand and pedal, etc. Even playing the passage repeatedly so that you memorize the excerpt is totally fine. In that way, you'll associate what the score looks like on the page with how it sounds and how it feels under your hands. As in learning to read written words, memorization and copying and learning morphologically is a perfectly legitimate way of building your skills. I mentioned other clefs earlier, and here are a few of them. There's a rare beast known as the French violin clef. It's a G treble clef that has G on the bottom line of the staff instead of the usual second line. There's yet another one known as the baritone clef that has the F of the bass clef positioned on the middle line of the staff. The first clef, the French violin, you can find if you look up original editions of 17th and 18th century French violin and flute sonatas. The second is rarely to be found in print, but if you simply visually erase the bottom line of a standard bass clef stave and add a line to the top of it, you'll get the picture. Once you've reached this Gandalf status as a movable clef reader, you can start using those clefs to help you with transposition. I've put together a short-form reference chart that will help you use different clefs to help you with transposition. Again, to use it most effectively, start with single lines and see what happens. You can find a link to this chart in the video description below. You can build your skills the way a juggler does, adding one new element each time you've systematically mastered the previous level of challenge. Sword and fire jugglers have to start somewhere, and the worst that's going to happen to you in score reading is that you might play a wrong note. Happy practicing! I hope some of these tips and tricks in reading C clefs and movable G clefs and movable F clefs have been helpful to you, and that the techniques will help you become a better musician and a better score reader and a better sight reader. Thanks for watching, and please join us for the next section.